According to political analyst Moeletsi Mbeki, the U.S. is primarily interested in South Africa because it wants the nation to realign its foreign policy with U.S. interests. Ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's Wednesday meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, Mbeki has been closely monitoring the two nations' diplomatic ties. Please kindly hit on the subscribe button so as to support our channel. Thanks. The goal of Ramaphosa's visit with Trump is to mend Pretoria's tense ties with Washington. Trump has shown himself to be a transactional leader, according to Mbeki. What Donald Trump and his crew want from South Africa is pretty apparent. Their goal is for South Africa to rejoin the Western side. They essentially just want that. They believe that South Africa has strayed from the Western camp and is increasingly moving toward the Eastern camp, which consists of China and Russia. After arrival at the Andrews Air Force Base, President Ramaphosa makes his way to a hotel in Washington. President Cyril Ramaphosa has once again called his bilateral meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump robust and fruitful, indicating the beginning of a new phase of South Africa-U.S. interaction, namely in the areas of trade and investment. Following his working visit to the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C., President Ramaphosa told South African media that the two leaders had an in-depth and positive exchange that covered everything from lighter topics like golf to more important topics like economic cooperation and shared issues. Although a number of issues arose, as you have all seen, we had a really good bilateral and were able to engage with Mr. Trump in your presence. We withdrew to the cabinet room for lunch after that encounter, which you all observed. The president said we were then able to have really good in-depth exchanges with President Trump and his other officials. A renewed commitment to ongoing cooperation between the two countries, particularly at the trade and industry level, was one of the meeting's main outcomes. Talks will go on through frameworks like the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. President Cyril Ramaphosa emphasized that talks would continue on a number of important topics, such as investment flows, tariff arrangements, and access to the U.S. market. To address the package of issues we had tabled that have to do with trade and investment, I want to reaffirm that engagement between South African and U.S. officials will continue, especially at the trade and industry level. The fact that there is a clear commitment and understanding that we would keep interacting, preventing disengagement, encouraged me. That was one of the main results we had hoped for. The president said that the goal of his visit was to reset and reposition relations between the two countries, which had become contaminated by some of the issues that had been raised during the engagement. According to the president, the bilateral discussion was a chance to rectify misunderstandings and allay worries. It was discovered that President Trump is worried about South African safety. We insisted that there was a security issue and that we were not fleeing it, even though he narrowed it down to white farmers. There are criminals that we even tried to address it from the beginning. One of the societal evils that results from a stagnant economy, poverty, and unemployment is crime, which spreads across the nation. President Cyril Ramaphosa said President Trump expressed his views on that, and I was rather pleased that a number of our compatriots were able to deal with that. It's not just in farms, it's in rural and even urban areas. Zingiswa Losai, president of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, the nation's biggest trade union, informed President Trump during the meeting in the Oval Office that South Africa's problem is not one of race, but rather one of crime and violence. Gender-based violence against women and the elderly is prevalent in rural regions, where the overwhelming population is black. Losai stated, "We are here to look at how both nations can work together to reset trade relations and investment, and also help us to have the technology that is needed to address the level of crime we have in our country. The problem in South Africa is not necessarily about race, but rather about crime. Investment and trade regarding the economy." President Cyril Ramaphosa reaffirmed South Africa's need for more U.S. foreign direct investment, pointing out that U.S. businesses already contribute significantly to the country's GDP. An hopeful indication of ongoing interest, he said, was a recent American investment in a local lithium firm. We didn't focus on that topic throughout our lunch conversations. He did, however, inquire as to what assistance our nation needs.